Hey Mekkah, it's been like half a year since the game came out. Where's all the Three Houses waifus at? You know we want to analyze interesting Fire Emblem units, so where are they? Well, I'm working on it, but there are some problems here. I pride waifu on being accurate to game experience, and the things I say in it should be applicable to your game, but in Three Houses the way unit stats work are just so different. They are so customizable and dependent on so many variables that it's hard to say, this unit performs exactly like this at this level during this chapter. Originally, I was going to talk about this in my very first actual Three Houses waifu video, but I find it such a fascinating and complex subject that I decided it deserves a video of its own. So, here are 7 reasons why it's hard to find a Three Houses waifu. Number 1, there are no stat averages like for other games. In previous entries, I could take a look at a website like FEA or Serenus Force to get a rough estimation of what a unit looks like at a certain level. I know that Amelia, for example, is going to have about 7 strength as a level 1 Cavalier and about 8 strength as a level 1 Knight, because the site lays it out for me. But for Three Houses, there is no such resource. Number 2, I would be okay with calculating average stats myself, but it's such a mess because in this game, changing your class changes your growths. Like, if you look at these Lysithea growths, these are her growths as a noble, but they change a bit once you change her into a monk, and then again if she becomes a mage or a priest, and then again if she becomes a warlock or a bishop, and then again if she becomes a dark knight, grimoire or mortal savant. Number 3, difficulty level is another big concern. At the start of the game we only had normal and hard mode to worry about, but now we also have maddening mode. And then, of course, there is a massive difference between playing on New Game and New Game Plus, and even within New Game Plus there are a lot of variables. For example, how many statues do you have unlocked? Do you buy weapon ranks or skills beforehand, etc, etc. Each player does these kind of things differently. Now normally I just only take the hardest difficulty into account, for example Hector Hard mode in Fire Emblem 7, but since maddening mode can be so frustrating, unfair and boring, I don't want to leave people who only play hard modes to miss out on my content, so I want to take hard mode into account too, but I also want to talk about maddening mode, and you know, New Game and New Game Plus, it's just very complicated. Number 4, there's even more customization for the player this time. In regular Fire Emblem games, there's already a variety in experiences between players, due to just how many resources a player is willing to assign to a unit can have such a huge impact, like the limited number of stat boosters you have available, or even how many kills you're willing to feed to a unit. But in Three Houses, there's these things, but then you also have gardening stat boosters, tutoring, auxiliary battles, and last but not least, skills and combat arts that can be equipped and de-equipped. There's just so much. Number 5, very different enemy stats. Even within the same difficulty setting, there is just a huge variance of enemy stats. In a game like FE7, I can pretty confidently say that a character only needs about 14 speed to double most enemy types, and with 20 speed you'll just double just about everything. In this game, enemy stats are just all over the place, and looking at the average enemy speed just isn't really meaningful, because most of them are either very fast or very slow. I can't really say you need about this much speed to double, because there is no such threshold. Number 6, Interhouse recruitments. We haven't even discussed the fact that units can be recruited from other houses. If you recruit Lysithea into the Black Eagles or the Blue Lions, for example, she can be expected to have different bases and weapon ranks depending on when she has been recruited, depending on what chapter. And if you recruit units later on, they get auto-leveled using growths that are higher than the ones they normally have, so they're actually stronger than they would be if you had trained them yourself. Number 7, I probably forgot something in the previous 6, so let me just use this last reason as a catch-all for things like DLC, weapon forging, weapon repairs, class mastery, supports, battalions, tea parties, anything I might have forgotten. There is just a lot of stuff that has a big impact on a unit's performance. I think this huge variance is a factor in why debates about things like unit and class choices in Three Houses can get so heated, because chances are no 2 players are using a unit in the exact same way, even though a lot of them aren't really all that customizable. Using Lysithea as an example again, if I were to play New Game Plus Maddening, but you instead play a New Game Hard, and then if I feed her some gardening stat boosters and you prioritize her when tutoring, and then I unlock her budding talent in swords, but you mostly use her as a healer, then we're going to get very different experiences, and as a result we'll have very different perspectives on what kind of a unit Lysithea is. What also contributes to these heated debates, I think, is that most people will feel like they know what they're doing, because their method resulted in them beating the game. Now, in reality, you don't need a good build to beat the game at all, because Three Houses is overall a really easy game, with the exception of maddening with no New Game Plus. I think this is also part of the reason why fans of certain Sacred Stones units and promotion paths are always so fierce, because their choice resulted in success, and therefore it must have been the right one. Everyone feels like an expert, because what they did worked. It's why there are so many self-proclaimed experts on Pokemon games on YouTube. They beat the game, and everyone called them a champion, so they must be Pokemon masters, right? But in reality, as long as you're able to press the 8 button 69.5 times, you can beat a Pokemon game. If the game gives you positive feedback on just about any choice you make, then is there really an objectively right choice? That's probably also why Sacred Stones discussions just get so heated. Like, when I talked about promotion paths or Amelia, everyone beat those games with their set of customizations, so those choices, they must have been the best one, right? Well, turns out the game is easily beaten, whether you grind Amelia as a paladin or a general. But really, paladin is the best choice. But yeah, back to Three Houses. The large amount of customization and variables make it so that a single unit choice or a single decision is just very hard to analyze, since there are so many other factors at play. How good a single unit is doesn't depend so much on a unit's innate abilities and merits, but on the amount of resources a player is able to give them. In previous games that was a factor, but they were mostly optional. Things like the Paragon Ring in FE4, or bonus experience in FE9, or just plain stat boosters. That was reasonably easy in comparison, but in Three Houses you get a huge package of things to distribute among your army, and it's such a huge part of the gameplay that it's honestly unavoidable. And that's why it's so hard to get a waifu on Three Houses units. But with this video to refer to as a disclaimer, I think I can finally make a Three Houses waifu properly. Until then, please keep leaving your suggestions for units to be featured, and maybe you'll see one of them. Peace and goodbye.